Hello and welcome to the Footballco Business Podcast. I'm your host Alex Manby, and on this show I'm speaking to Pien Meulensteen, a sports presenter, reporter and commentator working across Sky Sports, BBC, DAZN, CBS and a whole number of other broadcasters. Recently, Pien became the first woman to commentate on a live Premier League game on Sky Sports and took home the One to Watch On Air award at this year's Sports Journalism Association Awards. As you might have guessed from her surname, or maybe you already knew, Pien is the daughter of René Meulensteen, who's had a long and successful career in football, most notably as first-team coach under Sir Alex Ferguson at Man United during an incredibly successful period for the club. I'm looking forward to asking Pien about whether that context meant a career in football was always an inevitability for her, some of the highlights of her time as a broadcaster to date, and the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated industry. Pien, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Pien, is it annoying that I mention your dad there? Do you find it frustrating when people bring up his career when talking to you about your own?
Not at all. I mean, I actually really like it because I'm super proud of sort of everything that my dad's done, and he is a big reason of why I love football so much. And our whole family are football crazy. We love it. We love the sport. And that is a lot of it down to him. And yeah, I think he's done brilliantly well in his career so far. He still is doing, great things at the moment with Australia's national team. So yeah, why would I ever be annoyed at that? I think it's a really nice thing.
What was it like growing up, having him, moving around, moving clubs, obviously some stints longer than others? Was that a strange existence?
It was actually because we grew up in Qatar. We lived in Doha I was there for 4 years. So from when I was a baby to 4. So I don't actually remember much of it. But my parents were there for 12 years. So my mum, who I think is an absolute superhero for being able to do this, had 3 kids under the age of 5, sort of traveling back and forth from the Netherlands to Qatar whilst my dad was working in Qatar at the time. So it was quite difficult for her. But then obviously we moved to Manchester in 2001. Dad got the job at Manchester United as a youth team coach. So he was a development coach there, started working his way up through the ranks. And we were pretty settled at Manchester United for quite a long time. I mean, he went all the way up to the reserves. He was a reserve team manager. And then he had the opportunity to go and be the manager at Brøndby in Denmark. So we moved to Copenhagen when we were all this is when I was still at primary school. So I think I was in my last year at primary school. It was more difficult for my older brother, Joppa, who is a year older than me. He was just sort of getting into the high school stage. So he was moving into year 7. And so we all moved to an international school, but we'd only stayed there for 6 months because Dad then decided to go back to Manchester United because the first team coach job came up as a vacancy. So then we all moved back. So that was pretty difficult. I wasn't happy about that decision at all. I remember because I'd made so many great friends in Denmark and we went to an international school. So I met so many people from all around the world. I had friends sort of all around. So it was a really cool experience for me. I started ice skating as well. So that was my little sport. So I was pretty gutted as a child that we had to leave and go back to England. And it was more difficult because when we were going back, we were going back halfway through a school year. So making friends is more difficult. Getting to grips with the lesson plans and things like that is more difficult. So I think after that experience, my mum had sort of said, we're now going to stay in Manchester and wherever Dad gets the job next, he'll just have to go on his own. So bless him, he's had after Manchester United, I mean, he went to Fulham, he went to Russia, he went to India, he went to Israel, Australia now, of course. So he's had to do all that by himself. But I think my mum made the right call there in sort of keeping our base in Manchester. And as you can hear from the accent now, I'm an honorary Manc.
A proud and honorary Manc. Were you around Old Trafford much? Would you go and see him at work? Did you feel like you were sort of familiar and at home with Old Trafford even when growing up?
Yeah, because mainly really my younger brother...
Or Carrington for that matter.
Yeah, that's exactly. So my younger brother Mella was playing football in the academies at Manchester United. So I remember my mum and I reluctantly had to go and watch Mella train sort of pretty much most weeknights that he was at Carrington. So I'd have to take my homework with me and I'd be sitting in the cafe and obviously Dad would have just finished his training or whatever. So they would come up and you become that one big family. And it was sort of a thing where a lot of the academy players, even the reserve team players, were sort of just milling around the area. So you'd kind of get to know their families quite well. And then, of course, the players were still there. So, and then you start getting to know the receptionists, or you get to know the people that work behind the scenes, the people that work on the pitch, and everyone is just sort of one big family. So that was really nice. And then obviously when you go to Old Trafford and you see the people that you see sort of every week on a weeknight, and they're there also at Old Trafford, it did definitely start feeling more like a family. There was a point though where when I was probably about 12, just about starting high school, and I was not into football because none of my friends really wanted to watch it. None of my friends were interested in it. And my mum said, come on, we're going to Old Trafford. And this is when Dad got his first team manager job. We're going to Old Trafford and you will enjoy it because, it's something you'll never have experienced before, 70,000 people. And I remember she took me there for the first time. And yeah, I think I caught the bug pretty much instantly.
Did you play at all? Obviously, your dad was involved. Your brother was playing, still plays professionally now. What did you ever get into it, or was it just not of interest?
No, so I did when I was at high school. We actually had a football team, a girls' football team, but it was of every sort of age group because there just wasn't enough people that wanted to play, which was such a shame because, if we had more if it was more accessible for girls back when I was at school, I think I would have carried on playing, all the way through my high school years. But we sort of got into it, I think, sort of year 7, year 8. And then by the time it was like year 9, there just wasn't a team anymore. It was interesting, actually, because Millie Turner, who plays for Manchester United Women, we went to the same school together and we're really good family friends. And she was on the team. And I remember she was obviously the best out of everyone. And I can just remember thinking like, oh, poor Millie is probably thinking, I can't play with these people because they're just not up to my standard. And she was, obviously better than the rest of us because at the time she was already playing academy football. And it's the same goes for my older brother's now girlfriend, Ellie. She was also playing football at the time in academy, and they were the kind of girls that I wanted to be like. But because there just wasn't that opportunity really to continue it on, I sort of went into the other things that most of my friends were playing, which were hockey and netball and then athletics. So that sort of took over my life. And then, football took a little bit of a back seat, unfortunately.
Do you ever think what might have been? I mean, it's very topical what you're talking about here. And obviously following on from the Lionesses winning the Euros and Williamson and Wubben-Moy's campaign and the changes that the government have put in place. Do you ever sort of think, if it was 10 years or 15 years ago, if that had happened, the path might have been different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there was just more opportunities for girls to play when I was younger, I 100% would have carried on playing football because I actually think I would be quite a good football player. I already have the skills a little bit. So I thought if we would have been able to keep it up, then because I love the sport and I would have loved to play it when I was younger. And, all of the guys that were in my school, I went to a specialist sports college. So, sport was a huge thing for us at high school. And, football was a big thing. All of the guys played it. We would all go and watch the guys play on a weekend or in the after school whenever they had games and stuff. And it was the same with rugby. And for the girls, it was netball and hockey. And that was sort of the divide. And it's a shame that it was like that. And I wish it wasn't. But I'm glad that things are changing now. And I'm glad that sort of the younger generation of girls know that it is accessible for them. And they have an absolute right to play it, whether it's in school or outside of school.
So the path to being a professional footballer wasn't to be for you. Was it then a smooth path to being a presenter? At what point did you think that's something I want to do?
I think I've always known I wanted to do something in sort of TV or broadcasting. When I was younger, was doing a lot of TV stuff. So was part of an acting school and I had an acting agent and I was doing a couple of bits on screen. And acting, I just didn't feel that I didn't feel like I was enjoying it that much, but I knew I enjoyed being part of sort of the broadcasting side of things. And then I was actually very lucky when I was 15, which for me was a really crucial time in my life when you're picking, what GCSEs you're going to take for your A-levels when you go into sixth form. And my dad said, why don't you come in to United to work and have a look at MUTV? And Helen at the time is still working there now as well. Actually, she's Johnny Evans' wife, and she took me sort of under her wing. And I was only allowed to do it because at the time you have to be 18 to do work experience, whereas I was 15. But because my dad was working there, he was sort of my, parental guidance, that he was watching me whilst I was there. And she sort of took me under her wing and showed me around. And I just was like, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. I know pretty much everything about football in terms of like Manchester United. I know, I love doing stuff in front of the TV. I love doing stuff behind the scenes. I was just so interested in it. And that really sort of helped guide me throughout those really important years as a teenager, going into the last stages of school, of what do I actually want to do here. And, I was able to pick the right subjects. And then I knew I wanted to do broadcast journalism at university. And it sort of went from there, where I had a very clear sort of step-by-step way of where I wanted to be. And my dad actually sat down with me, and he does this in his career as well. And he was like, where do you want to be? What is your ideal point of where you want to be in life? And then how are we going to get there? So he would say, right, okay, this is the next step that we're going to make. So you're going to choose your GCSEs that are going to help you get to what A levels you need to get to. Same thing with the A levels. What A levels do you need to get into the correct university? And we sort of worked our way through there. But it was very important for me as well, especially whilst I was at university, because I knew what I wanted to do and I knew what I wanted to be, that I was working whilst I was at university. So I was getting the experiences whilst I was still studying rather than doing it afterwards. And I think that really set me ahead of the rest of sort of my classmates and students as well, because, it is tricky. You don't, so many young people don't know what they want to do. So I think, I was very lucky that back when I look at it, 15 years old, having that experience really helped guide me.
But you're right, it is uncharacteristic. I think most 15-year-olds, have no idea what they want to do. Most students probably still don't really know what they want to do. So it's sort of surprisingly, admirably specific that you already kind of had that goal and went for it. It sounds like it's been smooth sailing. Is that fair, or have there been setbacks along the way?
It hasn't been smooth sailing, I suppose. I think because it's been such a quick sort of transition into commentary, it has gone from sort of 0 to 100 very quickly for me in sort of the past year. But I suppose, like I was saying, whilst I was at university, I think that is when I did a lot of the sort of the hard yards that you have to do to get into broadcasting. So within my first year of uni, I'd got a job as a broadcast assistant at BBC Local Radio, because luckily for me, my university was Salford, and it was at the Media City campus, which is where BBC, ITV, Match of the Day is filmed there. So I was sort of surrounded by where I wanted to work. So I was looking out the window whilst I was at university in my lectures. I was looking directly at the BBC, or if we looked ahead of us, because ITV were right on top of us, and they had this big glass sort of floor that we could see up to where all the studios were, which is actually very inspirational as a student. When you're looking around, you're surrounded by these places of work that you want to be. And by my first year of uni, I was already working as a broadcast assistant. So I'd be doing a lecture. I would go into my lecture 9 till 12, and I'd go into work 12 till 8 and just sort of do assistant stuff. And I was learning the trade there. So I was, booking passes for reporters. I was speaking to press officers. I was going to press conferences. I was reporting. I was reading out the news. I was basically doing pretty much everything. I was doing tech. I was producing. And I think that's a really good place to start, especially with local radio, because you kind of have to be a bit of a person that can do it all and learn very quickly. And that was sort of the start for me. But it was tricky because you have to kind of, as a young person starting off, you kind of have to make your voice heard. And there was a lot of times where I'd be like, I want to do this. Can I go here? And most of the time, the opportunities were there, and they were very sort of, supportive of me doing what I wanted to do. But I think there's definitely, the hard work has to be there to be able to get to where you are today. And I think what I was lucky with was that it was sort of the right time for someone like me to come through. I don't think it's been like that for my other female colleagues that have been working in sort of sports commentary, sports broadcasting. Take 10 years ago, it was really difficult for them to even to be a newsreader. It was hard. So I think yeah, I think for me, I was lucky in the sense that it was the right time, but there's definitely been a lot of hard work behind the scenes as well.
Do you think there are some female broadcasters who paved the way for you there? And the context of the question I would put is, it was notable when the Lionesses won the Euros. A lot of them came out and they said, the England former footballers who have paved the way, didn't have the privileges we had. They didn't have access to training facilities, St George's Park, professional contracts, etc., etc. A lot of them called out the likes of Alex Scott and Kelly Smith and so on. Did you feel like maybe some female broadcasters had to come before you in order to make it easier for you?
Yeah, I think there's definitely been quite a few actually that have sort of knocked down that door and allowed people like me to come through. The likes of Vicky Sparks, Robin Cowan, Jackie Oatley, sort of to name a few in terms of female commentators. It's been very lucky for me that I've had people like that to look up to and also be able to share my experiences with them because, they've been doing it now for 10, 15 years and, it wasn't easy for them when they were coming through. I remember Jackie being the first ever female voice on Match of the Day and I don't think the audiences were ready for that. And, you need someone to sort of take that first step. And I think that was a huge thing for Jackie to do. She's an outstanding broadcaster and I have so much respect for her. And I thank her that she was sort of the one to take that first step, and it needs to have someone like that. And then you have the likes of, Robin, who did the commentary for the BBC for the Women's Euros, and she was outstanding, and she always has been. And Vicky as well, her radio and TV work on the BBC has been brilliant. So I think it was important that I had people like them to look up to and to show that this is possible, that there is an opportunity out there, not just for men, but also for women to work on men's football as well as women's football. And then you've got, so many other broadcasters. Kelly Cates is one of them for me, who is an outstanding broadcaster. The way that she sort of handles herself on screen and also on the radio, I think she's brilliant. So I'm so glad that there are so many people. I mean, there's such a big list. I could name so many, and how privileged are we that we do have that opportunity now to talk about all these female broadcasters that have been, rightly so, making their voices heard in a male-dominated industry.
There's a big list, but there's only one person who was the first female to call a Premier League match live on Sky Sports, and that's you. You must be very proud of that.
Yes, do you know what? When they first told me about it, I thought, I can't think about this too much because already there's a huge amount of pressure doing a live game for Sky. I was doing, for the past year, this season, you do things called match choice games. So you are doing the commentary live, but they'll play it out at a later time because they're 3:00 kickoffs and they can't be shown in the UK. They are being shown around the rest of the world, though. Whereas this was, my main sort of thing was I need to make sure I do the job well before even thinking about the fact that I was the first female. So yeah, I kind of sort of pushed that to the back of my mind, made sure I got done with the game, and it sort of went as best as I possibly, it could have gone, considering the stage that I'm at in terms of my commentary career. And and then afterwards it was kind of a big pinch me moment where I thought, I didn't understand the sort of the weight of it until people were actually talking to me about it, going, well done, you were just the first ever female. And yeah, hopefully that just is one of those things where that's done now, and hopefully there's plenty more sort of other women and girls that can come through and think now that they've heard someone on Sky Sports, not just the BBC. It's I think it was the right thing and at the right time as well.
You talked about speaking with your dad, working out long-term plans, putting goals in place and working towards those goals. Do you feel like this was on track, this moment, commentating your first live Premier League game on Sky Sports? Did it come earlier than you expected? Did it come later?
No, it definitely came earlier. In all honesty, I really didn't expect to be a commentator. When I was going through it with my dad, and we were saying I want to do it, presenting, reporting. That was my sort of aim in sports broadcasting. But I'd always, and my dad said this to me as well, you have to be so open to opportunities. I knew the area that I wanted to work in. I wanted to do football broadcasting. But what opportunities there were for me, I was very open to it. So whether that be producing, presenting, reporting, and I'd started off as a reporter and a presenter, and that is, I was working for Premier League Productions as a reporter. I was doing some stuff with Manchester United for their sort of TV programs as a presenter. So I was sort of getting to grips with doing what, I thought the pathway for me was. And then this opportunity came up with commentary. And really, being a commentator is just a different sort of side of presenting, different side of reporting, different side of journalism. They all sort of interlink together. And I was very, very sort of, I don't know, I didn't believe it when someone said to me, why don't you just try and do some commentary? Because I'd done a bit of reporting at football games for local radio, but it's a completely different ballgame when you're doing a full 90-minute commentaries. I remember listening to the radio commentators that I used to have to, produce or when I was a broadcast assistant, and I would think it was just an impossible task because I'm, how do you talk for 90 minutes? How do you keep going? It's really tricky. So I was very, very scared of the opportunity when they sort of first said to me, I think you should try it. We like your voice. And I was just very grateful that people gave me the opportunity and gave me, the opportunity to grow as a commentator as well. There's still so much more that I have to improve on. I'm not nowhere near the finished product, but I think, the fact that this has only been sort of a year in the making, in the running, and we're sort of making good sort of improvements each game. And that is the most important part is, more games under your belt, the more you'll learn about yourself and your voice as well. So yeah, no, I don't know. To answer your question, it was never sort of in the picture until about a year ago. And now it's gone very quickly and very fast. But again, like I say, I think it is the right time for female voices to sort of be heard on, the games that you'll see every weekend. So yeah, and I think it's time that the audience start getting used to it as well.
Well, you must be doing something right because you won this prestigious award, One to Watch on air award at the Sports Journalism Association Awards. That must have felt pretty good.
Yeah, it was a very nice thing. I know the BBC had told me they'd put me forward for it after my work at the World Cup, my first World Cup during the winter. So they did mention that they were going to put forward my little commentaries and stuff. And I just didn't expect it because actually the people that I was up against were brilliant. And, a lot of friends of mine that I've worked with for quite a few years now. So, like they say, and I was in esteemed company with them all. So I was very pleased that when they sort of told me, they did tell me a week before the event that I'd won it. So it kind of settled in or sunk in by the time I actually got to the awards. Which was nice because they gave us the awards right at the start of the evening. So I was able to actually enjoy the night after I picked up my award. But yeah, it was, it's nice to have that confirmation that you're doing the right thing, I suppose, because especially, someone like me, I am a bit of a perfectionist and, you worry about things all the time and what someone else might not hear, you'll always hear that didn't quite go so well. And you are your biggest self-critic. So it was a big confidence boost, and it was a very nice sort of evening and very nice thing to accept.
How's your increased public profile affected you? You must be getting recognised more often down the street. People come up and ask for selfies or autographs.
Not quite. I mean, that very rarely happens. I suppose that's the beauty of being a commentator, is that you're heard, not seen so much. So it's not too bad. So I've actually not had it that much. I mean, occasionally when you sort of are walking around Old Trafford or something, someone will spot you, but that might just be because they've seen me on MUTV. But it's very, very rare when that ever happens. So, but I think, it's not about me. And I think that's the main thing with sports broadcasting, and especially commentary, is it isn't about me. It's about the game. And how much can I have an influence on creating a better experience for the viewer of that game? So, and I mean, it gives me a little bit of fear, really, my profile growing a little bit more, because obviously with that comes more abuse, I suppose, on social media. And that's one thing I've had to start getting used to. And it's been quite tricky, the fact that it has kind of gone so quickly over the past year. And obviously your followers go up and stuff like that. And, luckily I don't have like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers that I'll get messages every day or anything like that. But sometimes in a way it hurts more when you get one or two that sort of come directly to you. It's a bit of a dagger into the heart. But I think those are the things you kind of have to get used to when you're in a job like this. And if you're being broadcast to the public, I suppose you can't please everyone all the time.
Have you experienced that? Because I feel like you've mentioned a couple of times since we've been talking audience reaction. You said it in the context of Jackie Oatley, and I think anyone who remembers it was pretty poisonous at the time. Online social media can be a poisonous place. Have you experienced any of that?
Yes, all the time. But I actually now will just not look at my social media for a good few days after I've done a commentary, because of course there's going to be things that I could have improved on. Of course there will be things that I know that didn't quite go as well as I thought they should have gone. And it's the same with, most jobs, the same with being a footballer. You're not every pass is going to be the perfect pass, and not every tackle is going to be perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. And with 90 minutes, of course, you're never going to have the perfect commentary. So, but I am, because I'm starting off and I'm surrounded by people in the gantry that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, and they are the comfort voices that people have heard. As soon as I see sort of negativity around me, it does hurt. And, you want to be able to do the best possible job that you can do. And, I've had people that have messaged sort of screenshots of like abusive messages and like collected them all and sent them to me, which was not very nice. But, in a way, it has taught me just in general that, I don't understand why anyone thinks it's okay to be so mean to someone that's just trying to do their best. Everyone in this world is just trying to do their best. And I think it's, there has to be a little bit of leeway in the sense that, 3 live games for Sky, and you've got Martin Tyler, who's done thousands of them. He's been doing the job for 30, 40 years. And obviously that's like comparing a 5-year-old's handwriting to a 25-year-old's handwriting. They're not going to be anywhere near the same. So there has to be a little bit of wiggle room in the sense that there is going to be improvement, and I need that opportunity. And luckily I've been working with brilliant broadcasters that have allowed me the opportunity to learn and to grow, because that's the only way you can do it. You can't really teach commentary. You just have to do a game, and then you'll learn every time. So I think that's important. And I've sort of had to learn to listen to the people that matter to me, learn to listen to the producers, the directors, my family, people that actually, whose opinions I can actually count on, rather than sort of social media. And that is hard because, you obviously want everyone to like you, and you want everyone to agree with what you're doing. And yeah, I suppose it's just one of those things that you kind of have to learn to grow a little bit of thicker skin, I suppose.
I noticed that on your Twitter, you only allow people you mention or follow to reply to your tweets. Is that part of this sort of defense mechanism of building up a barrier to stop the harmful comments?
Yeah, because I suppose like everyone's allowed an opinion, and I'm so, more than happy for everyone to tweet whatever they want to tweet, but it doesn't need to be directed to me. I don't need to see it because it's not helpful. So, I always do that. Just turn my sort of replies off. Basically just to save myself, I suppose, which is a shame. And there are other people that can deal with that a lot better than I can. I just can't deal with it. And I don't really, Twitter is probably the least thing that I use. It's the one that I've got the most followers on, but it's the least app that I use, because it can be a really ruthless place, because people can just tweet their opinions so quickly without even thinking about other, how people feel. And, I look at football players and the amount of abuse that they get, and the amount of horrible, nasty comments that they get. And I just think everyone, before they tweet something, needs to have a good long look at themselves, before they start abusing other people. Because why, ask yourself, why are you doing this? What are you getting out of this? And I understand people are angry. I understand people want a reaction from someone, but I think that's the best way for me. Is I save myself by not looking at it. What I don't know won't hurt me. And that's the best way to go about it. And if there is really something, if there's a nice tweet, or if someone has said something nice about it, then someone will send it to me that loves me and that wants me to see it. I'll see it. But other than that, I'll just stay away.
I think there's a consensus that all public figures on social media are liable at some point to receive online hate and abuse. But I think there's also an understanding that it is different if you are Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, or female, and that abuse can often become racist or misogynistic. in your case, obviously, it's the latter. Do you talk to other female broadcasters, and is there a sense that things are getting better or worse?
I do. I speak to a lot of my female colleagues about it, and they all have different ways of dealing with what happens to them. And I think the longer you're in the industry, the easier it is to find coping mechanisms. I was speaking to one of my friends, and she she never really looks on, she'll never search her name, but if she does, she will react the same to a really positive comment about her as she will about a negative comment. None of them will really affect her at all. And that's the way she deals with it. It's just a comment. It's nothing else. It's nothing personal. That's just the way that they feel. And that's how she deals with it. So it is interesting to listen to how other people cope with the way that they sort of deal with online comments and things like that. And there are so many times where I think to myself, oh, I might as well just delete it or delete social media. And but in a way, Twitter is a big part of my prep. I go on, I have to use Twitter to see, what is the fans' consensus about the game so far? What are the fans feeling about the teams? There's so much that you can actually take positive out of Twitter that I use as research rather than actually, just getting involved in opinions. I know there's a lot of, one of my other female colleagues will actually just reply to people. And I don't know how she does that, because I'm just like, oh gosh, I can't get into an argument with anyone because I don't like confrontation, but that's the way she deals with it. So yeah, I think they a lot of them just say to me to ignore it. And, the people that matter to you and the opinions that matter to you. And if there's anything that you have to know, people that that you trust will tell you. So yeah, I think it's a thing that you have to sort of figure out by yourself, but that the support is there. And most people that are, kind just wouldn't say anything nasty. So you kind of have to put yourself in that boat, I suppose.
Do you think there's a solution? And what is that solution? And by the way, I don't think it's up to people like you or, or me or any broadcaster out there to suggest the solution. But do you think about it at all?
I do. And I think everyone has a right of opinion, and I would never want to take that away from anyone. And it's, to me, it's totally fine if you want to be angry about someone, but I think it's a difference when you're targeting people and they're getting it directly at them. And I think I don't know what the way it is to do it, but I think people need to take a second to think before they tweet or before they write something. I think if you really think about, most people that will tweet will just tweet in anger or in a fit of rage or whatever if they're not happy with something, and they're not actually thinking about the fact that there's real humans that are watching that or that are reading it. And I think it's very easy to think that we're like robots because you only hear our voices, you don't see us, and it's the same, with footballers. They probably think they'll never see it because there's thousands and thousands of other tweets about them, but some of them get through. And I think it's just important that people are sort of educated on that in terms of think before you speak, I suppose. As simple as it sounds, it's what kind of impact are you wanting to have on this person? Because I think unless you've experienced it yourself, I don't think people really understand the weight that words can have on people. And I think everyone is going through something, and even though someone's life may seem perfect on the outside, or and that's the thing that social media can do. It can be a real filter for life that's not true. And I think a lot of people just need to think before they speak, and if that's the way that they want to deal with things, then that's more on them than it is on anybody else.
Pien, it's a fascinating conversation. I could talk about it for a long time, but I don't want to get too deep and sort of even maybe give visibility to these trolls, because that's what they want behind their screen of anonymity. So I want to end on a positive note, and my final question to you is, if you could choose any game, so we're looking forwards here, any fictional or possible match to commentate on, which would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a tricky one, really. But I think my sort of dream would be to do a World Cup final, men's or women's. Obviously, we've got the Women's World Cup coming up in the summer, which is really exciting. I think if I had the opportunity to do it with one of my countries, be that England or the Netherlands. I can sort of split myself evenly between the two. That would be pretty awesome to be able to do. A World Cup would probably be up there with the absolute sort of best of the best.
England or Netherlands, if they face off in the final in 2.5 months' time, who are you picking?
Do you know what? It's really tricky, that question, because my heart is with the Netherlands because I've got a Dutch passport. My whole family live there. It's funny, really, though, because whenever anyone asks me this question, I always say, well, I feel English when I'm in Holland or the Netherlands, and I feel Dutch when I'm here in England. And obviously I live here. This is my home, England. But I think the fact that I've still got a Dutch passport, no English passport at all, sort of my heart stays with the Netherlands. And then, yeah, I've got to be different, haven't I? I've got to go with the Netherlands. And then if they go out, I'll go with England.
Well, we'll see what happens in a couple of months. And will you be working on it? Will you be involved in the Women's World Cup?
Yes, I will be. So really looking forward to that. Obviously, it'll be really interesting with it being in New Zealand and Australia, and some of the numbers that are going out there to Australia and New Zealand will be brilliant to see. So yeah, I can't wait, especially hoping that the momentum continues with the Lionesses from what we had at the Euros going all the way to the World Cup. I think this is going to be a really special tournament.
Brilliant. Well, Pien, best of luck with Sky Sports. Best of luck with the World Cup. Best of luck with everything you do. And thanks very much for your time.
No, thank you very much for having me.
And thank you, listener, for tuning in. Please make sure you subscribe to this podcast to not miss any upcoming episodes. Until next time, all the best.